On Ticker, this is Import Export with Lawrence Christophels.
Hi everyone, thanks for sticking around. We've got a really important discussion now, especially in light of some recent events here in Australia. But I'm joined in the studio today by George Hadjiyannakis from GDA Australia, Container Unpack Specialist. Thanks, George, for coming along.
Thank you for having me, Lawrence.
George, I'm going to kick off because this is it's important and it leads really into our discussion. You know, we heard in the industry that unfortunately someone perished unpacking a container, a couple of weeks ago here in Australia. And that worries all of us in the sector because what you guys do with GDA, GDA is really take that professional approach, trained approach, and insured approach to unpacking containers so that this sort of stuff doesn't happen. So, with that being said, tell me a little bit about GDA, why you started, and how long it's been operating.
Look, GDA started approximately 16 years ago. Like most families, we had a child and we needed some extra finances. I just went out and unpacked containers while I was doing my full-time job as well. And I was able to grow the business from that, and now after 16 years we unpack the containers basically all over Australia, so we've been able to take it to the next level. Yeah,
sure. And I think that when you're looking at the container unpacks, how do you know, one of the unique points of difference that GDA offers versus in-house operations or other casual labour is that you've got a fixed price per container. So how do you go about doing that? Like if I'm an importer and I've got containers of widgets coming in and then there's another container full of different product, how do you know how to price that up?
It's been a long time in the making. I personally unloaded containers for approximately 8 years, and then all the people with me in my upper management as well have all unloaded containers. So we pretty much have a great idea of how long it should take to unpack a container. When you have trained staff that all they do in and out every day is pick up boxes and put them down, they're conditioned for it, they're trained for it. A container that will take most companies 8 hours to unpack when they use their own staff actually takes us approximately 2 hours. So just to give you an idea, a 40-foot container for about 3,000 boxes, we can do that in about 2 hours.
Wow, yes. And that's, I think, you mentioned there, that's all you do. So the difference between what I love about GDA is that you're not just a labour company saying, okay, well, I'm an importer or a warehouse, I need to get a few extra hands on deck, and I'll ring up a labour company. Now, they'll be on the floor trying to do pick orders, do all that sort of stuff, they're learning as they go, and then they might be thrown into a container to unpack stuff. It's a totally different skill set. How do you actually load a pallet? How do you know to make it safe, like we talked about at the start? When you're actually loading product onto a pallet, that takes a level of training and expertise.
Absolutely. Look, most people believe unpacking containers is easy. And you know what? Look, it is easy, but there's a right way of doing it and a wrong way of doing it.
And if you get it wrong, there's some severe consequences.
Look, we're not a labour hire agency by any means. We are just a specialised unpack container. Our workers are trained to unpack the containers safely and efficiently. When you use a labour hire agency, it's anyone just coming off the books being sent to the warehouse to go and do the job. And when we talk about the safety, like as you mentioned earlier with someone passing away just last week, unfortunately most warehouses and owners of companies believe if they outsource their work, they outsource their legal requirements to provide a safe workplace, and it's not the case. The whole idea is to get someone to do a risk assessment of the actual duty that needs to be done, which is what we do, which reduces any liability that you may have later on down the track. So if someone was to have an accident and they've come from a labour hire agency, they've never been trained how to unpack a container, you haven't given them a proper induction, you're in a world of hurt, basically.
And it is. It's something that, the ability to gauge how to properly unpack the cartons, how to then load the cartons on the pallet, but also how to do that quickly enough that you're not, you're not slowing down in your operations.
Yeah, look, it takes time to learn how to do it. And I'm going to give you a perfect example. If I'm a professional tiler and you're not a professional tiler, and we both go and quote to do a job for tiling for someone, it could be a 50 square metre job, and I'll tell that person I can do that for you for X dollars. When I finish the job, it'll be done in a day, tiles will be perfect, level, flat. You can go and do that job and you might charge that client $30 an hour, it's nice and cheap. You'll take 10 times as long to lay one tile, and it's still, at the end of the day, will not be even. The grout lines will be uneven as well, and the tiles will be wobbly. you need to have someone experienced in that field.
Yeah.
It's the same with pallets. If you have a pallet that's loaded, that's going to go into Coles, Woolies or Safeways, and the stock's all over the pallet, they're going to reject it.
Yeah. Well, not even just going out, even storing. Like if you've
Absolutely.
got a poorly loaded pallet, that blows out your whole storage capacity. Because in a warehouse, if you've only got 4 or 5 boxes on a pallet, when you can actually get double that. When you're slotting it, when you're looking at utilisation in your racks, you're actually not getting the most out of your warehouse optimization if it's actually not unloaded properly.
Yes, and what about even when it's not even wrapped properly,
Yeah,
and it gets picked up with the fork and all the stock tips, or in transit?
Yeah, and the other really thing that I've observed with your team is that when containers are typically unpacked for people who don't know, they mix the SKUs up, and that's a major pain because one, it's very expensive. You've got to break down pallets, find the stock you're trying to look for, or you actually start missing stock. So when you're doing your stock takes, you're doing your inventory control, all that stuff turns to an absolute mess because no one's actually properly put that product away because of the unpack process. So one of the things that is really important and valued and understated in what you guys do is that you actually get the product unpacked right. You do the SKU allocation right, and that's because you are doing this that's all you do day in, day out.
That's all we do, and the cost savings are massive, especially if you're not getting it done at the docks.
Yeah.
You can have the container shipped straight to your warehouse, and we'll come out to your warehouse and unpack the container for you.
Yeah.
We'll do the risk assessment. We'll go through any issues that may arise. A lot of people, when you look at the risk assessment, forget about the climate.
Yeah.
Climate these days is very important. We've had a couple of 45-degree days in Melbourne.
Yeah.
An example of that, we had clients. We know whose containers are in the sun, whose containers are inside a shed, and even when the managers are ringing up booking the containers to be unpacked for that 45-degree day, they'll say, "Could I please have someone at midday?"
Yeah, yeah.
Our office will then say, "Look, we'll try to do yours at 8 o'clock in the morning," and if by chance everyone needing to be done at 8 o'clock in the morning, the clients that have their containers inside a warehouse, we'll ask them if it's possible to do it a little bit later so that everyone can get their containers done safely.
Yeah. And that other management aspect of the slotting, the time slotting with the transport companies, you guys work with the companies on that as well.
Massive savings, demurrage charges. Most companies could take a day to unpack a 40-foot container, and they might have 4, 5, 6 containers coming in, so they bank one up every day. There's been many times they've been asked to come in and do the containers, and we can do all 4 in that one day.
Yeah.
So it can be dropped off and picked up and returned.
Yeah, transport companies love it. You can basically do crossovers and double back on. You by the time they've actually picked up another full container from the wharf, you've unpacked the first one, so they take the empty straight back.
Yeah, and to take the stress out of our clients, instead of they've got someone in the administration trying to organise how long it will take to unpack a container, we know.
Yeah.
So we let them know.
Yeah.
So we'll say, bring one in at 10, you can bring the next one in at 12:30. We believe after that one we can do it. That one's only a 45-minute container, so we can schedule the containers for them.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, the outsourcing part of supply chain it's going to continue to be a niche specialty as part of every leg of the supply chain. Container unpacking and packing, I should say, is a critical part, but often overlooked because people don't give it enough attention about how you can increase productivity, save costs. The risk part that we talked about at the very outset is a critical part of that business.
Look, the risk part is absolutely massive.
Yeah.
New laws are being changed now, so you can be up for manslaughter charges. Unfortunately, what will happen in a lot of warehouses, and the owners don't know, the directors could be away overseas, they have managers running, guys get sent to unpack containers, and all regulations are thrown out the window.
Yeah.
I've seen 4 containers lined up in a row of docks with people unpacking containers and forklifts going in between them all. Even as far as opening up a container door, I've seen companies that don't even use straps. Now, do you know if that stock's going to tip on you or not?
Yeah.
And this is why it's important to have a company that does this every single day in and out.
Yeah,
we know all these regulations. And when we do say, look, at the end of the day, you are responsible, but we're just as responsible, and we want to work with you because we all want to go home safely.
Yeah. So GDA, I know you operate in the East Coast, and is there any stock you don't touch?
When it comes to hazardous material, we'll most likely keep away from that as the risks are very high.
Yeah, sure. But apart from that, the best way to get in touch is obviously, I think the website was up on screen, gdaoz.com.au.
Yes.
Speak to yourself, George. But it's really critically important that when we're working with so many importers and exporters, both startup companies, new growing businesses, but also the more advanced, experienced businesses. They see the cost benefit.
Absolutely.
But you know, it's just, you know, like we were talking about with Gabrielle before at the start of the show. You know, you don't need to try and overmanage everything or micromanage everything. Use experts. People are doing that to the absolute, get the 1% differences out of every part of the supply chain. Importing and exporting is even more so important to do that because there's so many things that go wrong.
And this saying this to most directors of companies: when you're building a house or you're building a fence, whatever you do, you get someone who's experienced in that field. You need to do the same with your business.
Yeah.
You don't just send out anyone to come and do it. Unfortunately, as I say, I strongly believe a lot of labour hire agencies, they have 3,000 people on their books. They'll get a call up and they'll just send Joe Blow to go and unpack this container. No one even knows what he's done. If he's had injuries, his previous history, any training he's had, we can provide all that training to all our clients if they need to see it on who's coming in.
Yeah.
And more importantly, once we have our workers on that site, we do our best to keep the same people there.
Yeah.
And for us it is possible because these boys have been working with us for years.
So they become part of the team, but they know the product, they know the way it's handled, they know the way the container come in, and they also know the way that it needs to be packaged to get the best out of the warehouse.
And what happens when someone doesn't show up to work?
Yeah.
It's a meltdown.
Yeah.
We call the agency, one of the workers haven't shown up, what do you do? Yeah. With us, it can happen.
Yeah.
A boy is sick, can't show up. Yeah. What we will do is we have a lot of crews in the area and we can send them from one job straight to the other to help out.
Great.
And we do that at no extra charge for the client.
Fantastic. George, it's been really important. You know, I know that I'm a huge fan, as you know, GDA. I know you're a proud partner of ATLC, and that's why it's important for companies to really outsource to experts. I cannot understate how important the risk mitigation part is. Cost savings are a massive bonus in any right anyway. So definitely reach out to George. I'm going to ask you to stick around. After the break, we're going to be joined by Zoran Kostanovsky from CBFCA. So I'll keep you on the panel.
Thanks, guys.